You've got 24 hours to tear down that eyesore or the sheriff gets involved. That's what the queen of the HOA, Victoria Ashworth, snarled at me, just seconds before I dropped the truth bomb that would obliterate her entire empire. 3 days into building my dream retreat, and this woman storms onto my land like she owns the mountain. Clipboard clutched tight, perfume choking the pine-scented air, and her SUV convoy crackling over gravel behind her. She came armed with legal threats and HOA nonsense, demanding I tear everything down or face thousands in penalties. What she didn't know, I held the very secret that would not only protect my land, but unravel the crooked power game she'd built. But before I tell you how one phone call dismantled an entire HOA scam, leave a comment. What would you do if your neighbors try to take your land? And where are you tuning in from? Because this isn't just my story. HOA horror stories are everywhere. Let me rewind. I'm Brennan, 45, divorced, electrician, fresh out of court battles and city living. I inherited 5 acres of Colorado mountain land from my late Uncle Silas, our family's legendary ghost. Silas vanished into these woods decades ago, only reappearing on holidays smelling of chainsaw oil and pine bark. People called him crazy. I called him brilliant. When I got the call from his attorney saying the land was now mine, I knew this was a lifeline. A way to rebuild not just a house, but my life. Maybe even earn back my daughter Emma's respect after the messy divorce. The land? Breathtaking. A crystal-clear stream ran through it. Hawks cried overhead, and the scent of pine and sage was better than any therapy. There was an old concrete foundation, something Silas had clearly started, and a dusty old workshop straight out of a Wild West museum. Breathing that clean air, far from city smog, something inside me healed. I quit my job, cashed out the 401k, picked up tools, and started building a modest cabin. Just a place where Emma could spend weekends and see her dad wasn't a total screw-up. The work felt honest. Hammer and nail, sawdust and sweat. After years of legal warfare, it was like I'd found my soul again. Then on day 3, she showed up. Victoria Ashworth, 50-something tyrant in designer activewear, stepping out of her spotless white BMW like she was descending from Olympus. Leather portfolio in hand, heels crunching against the rock with military rhythm. Her perfume hit like a chemical weapon, battling the mountain air. "Excuse me," she barked. "Are you the party responsible for this unauthorized construction?" I paused mid-cut with my circular saw. The way she said individual made it sound like a disease. Brennan. "I'm building a cabin on my land," I said flatly. She flipped through documents like she was auditioning for a courtroom drama. "This build violates multiple HOA covenants. No permits. No design review. No environmental clearance. This," she waved at my half-finished cabin, "is a threat to community property values." I scanned the endless wilderness. "What community?" She pointed to some official-looking printout. "The Pine Valley Homeowners Association governs all property here. Your uncle agreed to our rules when we formed the HOA 6 months ago." My heart stopped. Silas died 8 months ago. She ignored that, handed me a cease and desist order. "Remove all structures within 48 hours or face $2. 500 in fines, increasing daily. We take our standards very seriously." But then her smile turned sharp. "Let me be honest, Mr. Brennan," she said, eyes scanning my flannel shirt, calloused hands, dusty boots. "This isn't the kind of place where men in your situation tend to do well. We have expectations for our residents. I'd hate for your daughter to be embarrassed by any unpleasant scenes." My blood froze. She knew about Emma, my divorce, my financial records. She'd researched everything. "Are you threatening my family?" I asked, voice tight. She grinned. "I'm offering advice. You're clearly outmatched. Why make this harder?" And with that, she spun on her heel and drove off. Her taillights vanished down the winding road. But I could still hear Uncle Silas's voice echoing in my head. Don't let anyone push you around. I looked at the cease and desist, then at my cabin. Victoria Ashworth had no idea what storm. She just woke up. Victoria didn't wait the full 48 hours. She was back the very next morning. And this time, she brought backup. Her white BMW rolled in first, followed by a dented Honda Civic that coughed smoke as it stopped. Out stepped a man who looked like he lost a bet with fashion. Cheap suit, crooked tie stained with old coffee, and a duct-taped briefcase that screamed desperation. "This is Douglas Cranky," Victoria announced proudly. "Legal counsel for the Pine Valley HOA. Cranky fumbled with a stack of papers. Mr. Brennan, you're being served," he said, voice cracking. "Cease all construction immediately. You now owe $$15,000 in violation penalties. Also, it appears you never received proper HOA disclosure during transfer of ownership. So, your claim to the land might be invalid." I stared at him. 15 grand? For building on my own land? Victoria smirked. Cranky smelled like stress and instant noodles. The two of them stood there, trying to suffocate me under the weight of their fake legal authority. "I'll let my attorney review this," I said evenly. Victoria laughed. "Let's be real, Mr. Brennan. You can't afford an attorney." The moment they drove away, I headed straight for the county courthouse. Inside, I found Betty, a seasoned records clerk who knew every document in the system by heart. The place smelled like old paper and government neglect, but digging through those files gave me a rush. And that's when I found it. The Pine Valley HOA was officially formed 2 months after Uncle Silas died. The property lines had been drawn like a sniper scope, perfectly surrounding just 12 houses. My 5 acres? They made up 60% of the entire area. Convenient. Betty leaned in over the zoning maps. "Looks like someone redrew these just to rope in your land. And everyone on the board." She tapped names. Victoria's family or employees of her husband's company. This wasn't a homeowners association. This was racketeering in yoga pants. And here's the kicker. Dead men can't sign new contracts. You can't bind someone to a covenant after they've already passed. Which meant Silas never agreed to anything. And legally, neither did I. Time for my counterattack. I reached out to Sarah Kim, a real estate attorney known for eating corrupt developers alive. Her office was clean, focused. It smelled like espresso and fire. "No way this holds up," she said, flipping through the files. "Retroactive HOA covenants on inherited land? Dead owner? No proper disclosure? This isn't just shady, it's illegal." She started listing charges like a shopping list. Harassment, misrepresentation, emotional distress, boundary fraud. But Victoria wasn't done escalating. 2 days later, she hosted a secret emergency HOA meeting. I wasn't invited, but my neighbor Jake was. That night, he sat on my porch, sipping beer and shaking his head. "She's painting you like a criminal, Marcus. Telling people you're some drifter with a record. Folks are scared." It got worse. Victoria launched a Facebook group, Pine Valley Community Safety. She posted my photo, an old one from a union newsletter, alongside fear-mongering captions about a dangerous outsider threatening the neighborhood. The comments were pure venom. "Protect our kids. Why hasn't the sheriff acted? Is this guy even legal?" But Victoria made a fatal mistake. In an attempt to flex the HOA's financial strength, she posted public financial statements. One look and my jaw dropped. $847,000 in special assessments collected from just 12 homes. Over $70,000 per family. And for what? No clubhouse. No trails. No roadwork. I'd seen this game during my divorce. When someone's lying about money, the paper trail always tells the truth. When I showed Sarah, she nearly choked on her latte. She just admitted to large-scale financial fraud. Publicly. Now we had a case for federal investigation. The next morning, Victoria dropped her biggest threat yet. A dusty county vehicle rolled into my driveway. Out stepped a building inspector holding a clipboard and a grim expression. He handed me a citation filled with violations that read more like a demolition order than a safety check. "Sorry, man," he muttered, not meeting my eyes. "Orders from the top. Someone's pulling serious strings at the county office." I watched his truck disappear down the road, the weight of corruption sinking deeper into my chest. Victoria had gone from HOA pest to weaponizing government agencies. She wasn't just harassing me anymore. She was abusing public power to destroy a private citizen. But in doing so, she handed me my ace. See, when someone uses public officials for personal revenge, federal investigators start paying attention. Financial fraud is one thing. Bribery of local officials? That's where the real heat begins. And just when I thought she couldn't stoop lower, she proved me wrong. At 3 a.m., I woke to the sound of glass shattering and the harsh sting of diesel fumes burning my nose. I rushed outside, heart racing, to find my construction site in ruins. Someone had gone full mob movie. Lumber scattered like toothpicks across the dirt. My generator was flipped, fuel leaking into the soil. Roofing nails glittered across the road, like landmines from my tires. The message was loud and clear. Victoria had stopped playing house. She was ready to go full warpath. At sunrise, I found all 4 tires on my truck slashed. And sitting in my inbox, a complaint filed with the EPA, accusing me of destroying protected wetlands. Wetlands, by the way, that had been part of this property since the Ice Age. Then came the cars. Midday, a row of vehicles began parking in front of my entrance. Not quite blocking me in, just enough to force a 10-point turn every time I left. When I approached the drivers, they smiled smugly. "We're just using our right to park on public roads," one of them said, grinning like a hyena. It was legal, technically, but it was war by passive aggression. And she wasn't finished. Next came the fake signs, big yellow warnings staked along the road. Hazardous site. Authorized personnel only. They looked just official enough to scare people off. My contractor, Pete, called in a panic. "Marcus, I've got customers asking if I'm licensed for toxic cleanup. Rumor is your land's contaminated. This is killing my business, man." Victoria was weaponizing my own reputation, turning people who once waved and smiled into fearful strangers overnight. But in every con game, desperation makes people sloppy. Sarah and I spent the next 48 hours digging deep at the county records office. And what we uncovered, it made my blood run cold. 6 months ago, the exact same time the HOA was formed, a luxury development company called Mountain Vista Resorts submitted plans for a $50 million project. Spa, golf course, helipad, the whole 9 yards. The resort was missing one thing. My 5 acres. They couldn't break ground without it. It was the scenic heart of the entire plan, the crown jewel. Without my land, the development died. Betty, our record clerk, pointed to a buried detail in the documents. Community consulting fee, $400,000 paid to an unnamed third party. Sarah froze mid-sip of her coffee. That's not consulting. That's a bribe with a paper trail. It all clicked. Victoria wasn't just enforcing community standards. She was brokering a backroom deal worth millions. And my resistance? It was bleeding her dry. Every day I delayed was costing her hundreds of thousands in potential commissions. So I decided to hit back. That night, I went full electrician. I wired up cameras, motion sensors, night vision, a security system that would catch God himself trespassing. And sure enough, my patience paid off. Just after midnight, a pickup truck rolled slowly down my drive. Headlights off, engine purring like a cat. The driver stepped out in a hoodie. But even with the shadows, the face was unmistakable. Tommy Ashworth, Victoria's grown son. He crouched near the lumber pile, pouring something from a red gas can, until he froze. My motion sensor lights snapped on, and the cameras caught everything. His face, the gas. The moment he looked up and locked eyes with the lens, deer in headlights. The next morning, I walked in the sheriff's office with video proof. Crystal clear footage, license plate and all. Tommy's felony arson attempt destroyed Victoria's entire concerned citizen facade. But I wasn't finished. We started combing through the HOA's public financial records, and it was a goldmine of corruption. Security expenses paid to shell companies. Landscaping services billed by a Florida address, Victoria's brother-in-law. Legal research fees so bloated they could fund an entire law school. She wasn't running a neighborhood. She was bleeding it dry while cashing in behind their backs. As I replayed the footage of Tommy pouring fuel next to my lumber pile, lightning crackled in the distance, a mountain storm building to match the one about to erupt in court. Victoria wasn't just corrupt. She was cornered. And people like her? They strike hardest right before the fall. The very next morning, I opened my front door to find a process server waiting with a thick envelope. Inside, an emergency court injunction. Victoria was claiming that I was constructing a commercial facility intended for transients and criminals. According to her latest fantasy, I was secretly building a halfway house for undesirables that would destroy the community's moral fabric. I stood there on my porch, the scent of fresh pine mixing with the oily stink of fresh printed legal ink, staring at 15 pages of absolute fiction. She wanted $100,000 in community damages. She demanded an immediate court order to demolish my cabin. And worst of all, she filed for a restraining order to bar me from setting foot on my own land. But that was just her opening act. By noon, 3 separate county inspectors swarmed my property like bureaucratic hornets. Building safety, environmental compliance, septic sanitation, all citing violations that simply didn't exist. The lead inspector, Rodriguez, looked genuinely uncomfortable as he photographed my wiring, which I'd installed the code, top to bottom. "I'm sorry, man," he muttered quietly. "This isn't personal, but someone up the ladder's pushing hard. This comes from way above my pay grade." That metallic tang of corruption hung in the air again, thicker than the mountain fog rolling in from the cliffs. I remembered something from my divorce. When legal threats fail, the truly dirty start drowning you in red tape. Endless inspections, fines that never stick, death by 1,000 paper cuts. But Victoria wasn't done. She reached for the one weapon I never saw coming. That afternoon, my ex-wife Linda called, her voice shaking with rage. "Marcus, what the hell is going on? Emma's friends are showing her Facebook posts calling you a sex offender. She's locked in her room sobbing, asking if you're some kind of monster." My stomach dropped through the floor. "What posts?" I asked, voice trembling. "A community group," she snapped. "Your picture, warnings about predators in the area. They're saying you're dangerous." She's mortified. Kids at school are whispering, laughing. "Marcus, this is going to destroy her." It hit like a train. Victoria had crossed every possible line, and now she was using my daughter as ammunition. "It's all lies," I said. "I'm fighting a crooked HOA trying to steal my land. They're making stuff up to break me." "You better fix this fast," Linda warned. "Judges don't play around with online rumors like this. It could affect custody." She hung up. I stood alone in Silas's old workshop, the smell of sawdust and old motor oil surrounding me like ghosts from another life. My hand shook. My throat burned. This was no longer about land. It was about family. It was about protecting the only person in the world who still believed in me. But Victoria didn't realize. She just handed me my final weapon. That evening, Jake knocked on my door, face pale. "Marcus, she's losing it. That HOA page posted again. This time they claim you threatened to burn down the neighborhood. They used a photo of you holding a circular saw, zoomed in, blurred, made to look like a weapon. The comments? Out of control. Call SWAT. Get this psycho out of here. He's a danger to children." Jake leaned in close. "But listen, 3 HOA families approached me today. Quietly. They're scared. Victoria threatened to double their assessments if they didn't support her. She's got them under her thumb." It was crumbling. The illusion of control. Her empire of intimidation was starting to rot from the inside. The next morning, Sarah and I drove back to the courthouse with everything. The altered property lines, fake citations, Tommy's arson attempt, the Facebook smear campaign, and the HOA's financial statements. Sarah handed a thick folder to the county clerk. We're filing a civil suit and requesting a federal investigation. Financial fraud, abuse of authority, attempted arson, defamation, coercion, wire fraud, racketeering. The clerk's eyes widened as she flipped through the documents. Then I made one final call to an investigative reporter I knew from a job site years ago. I handed him a flash drive and said, "You want a story that'll blow the roof off corrupt HOAs? Here's your front page." 2 weeks later, it was everywhere. Local HOA president under federal investigation. Community members accuse Ashworth of fraud, extortion, and sabotage. Video emerges of alleged arson attempt by HOA leader's son. Victoria's empire imploded overnight. Tommy was arrested and charged with attempted arson. Multiple homeowners came forward and testified against her. The resort pulled their offer, citing irreparable reputational damage. County inspectors involved in the fake citations were placed under review. As for Victoria, she resigned from the HOA, moved out of Pine Valley, and disappeared. I rebuilt my cabin. Finished it just in time for Emma's visit. She stepped onto the porch that summer, eyes wide. "You really did it," she whispered. "I told you," I smiled. "I wasn't going to let anyone take this from us." And with the scent of fresh pine in the air and the mountains stretching out into forever, I realized something Uncle Silas had always tried to teach us. Sometimes the land fights back, but sometimes, if you stand your ground, it fights with you.